It's Tuesday, it's tea time, and I'm here to talk to you about why stash is bad. Now, normally I'm a good vibes sort of person, right? I don't like to talk about why things are bad, but stash can be overwhelming. Like I said last week, it is a monolith. That monolith, once it gets tall enough, can cast a pretty deep shadow. You can have some dread looking up at the monolith and wondering where you're going to find time to do something with all of it. Stash is a problem when you die because somebody who doesn't know what any of it's worth is just going to give it away, probably to somebody who doesn't know what it's worth. And it is the greatest fear of a lot of people that their spouse will not know how much their collection is worth and will give it to someone who was not going to appreciate it. They'll donate it away. They'll throw it in the trash. That's the worst. That's the worst. The fear that the sum total of everything that you have collected will just become absolutely worthless and go into a dump and sit there and rot or not, depending on what it is that you have in your stash. If you have little plastic men, they're never going to rot. They will stand the testament of the ages in the landfill, sitting there in their parts, attached to their sprue forever. Stash is an existential crisis. Stash, we can invent pressure attached to stash. Stash is shameful for a lot of people because they look at their stash and they see things that they thought they would do, that they dreamed they would do, and the weight of not having done them. Stash can be an addiction. In fact, I've heard stories about women who buy yarn and quilting fabrics, and they have taken the bed out of their guest bedroom and put the fabric and yarn in totes and put a quilt over it so that it looks like a bed, so that their spouse does not know how much they're buying. Don't do that, okay? Don't do that. This you and the 40K people are the same. Don't do that. If you're married to somebody, you should be talking to them about the stash that you're bringing into the house. And, there should be communication. And yes, they should be supportive unless, it really is a problem. Because sometimes it is. When you don't have enough space to store it, it becomes a problem. I'm culling a bunch of stuff because I don't have the room for it. I don't have the space to store things that aren't being used. I have downsized my storage so that I can have space to work because stash was taking over. Be a responsible stash owner. You have to know that the myth that stash grows to fit the size of its container is absolutely false. Stash never stops growing. And if you're going to adopt stash, you need to be prepared for that. You need to be prepared for the stash to propagate and for you to find new homes for the things that have propagated that you can no longer care for. You have a responsibility to stash. Be a good stash owner. You have to care for your stash. You have to feed it correctly. You can't just put some types of stash into a plastic bin and put it in the attic. It will destroy it. You have to know these things. You have to research these things. You have to be mindful. It's a lot of mental work keeping a stash. It's physical work too. You have to go through it. Don't not go through your stash. Don't just let it sit there and build up and build up. The weight of it will crush itself. It'll crush you. Stash is meant to be used. And if it's not being used, if it just sits there gathering dust, it does no one any good. You have to take it out. It needs to be viewed. It needs to marinate and tell you the thing that it wants to become. Yeah, sure. You can keep something in your stash for 15 years. Those old metal sisters of battle, now they're a special addition to the new plastic army. Those old firstborn from the early 90s in their pock-marked pewter, they can add some character to an army. But if you're just keeping them because you paid a lot for them and they don't actually make you feel anything, that's when stash goes bad. That's when stash crushes you. That's when stash becomes an obligation. That's why many people feel that stash is shameful, because people look at how much they have and they go, whoa, that's a lot. And maybe it is a lot. Maybe it isn't a lot. And the person who's saying that just doesn't know how many pencils an artist needs. They don't know how many pens you need. They all have different line weight. They all have different ink. Maybe they don't know how many pairs of scissors you need. They don't know. They've never done it before. How many little gray plastic men do you need? How many boxes of unassembled gray plastic men do you need? They don't know. And they'll look at the number that you have when it's stacked up higher than you are tall, and they're going to judge you. And that's just the fact of having stash. Someone is going to judge you and try to make you feel shameful because of your abundance, because they're jealous. Stash breeds jealousy. It separates the haves and the have-nots. People will look at things that you bought when times were better, and they will go, this is a limited edition fabric. How could she afford a limited edition fabric? She must be frivolous with her spending. When in reality, you saved up. And you knew that there was going to be a limited edition fabric that came out from Silk Baron one day. And when it did, and you found the one that you needed, you had the money saved up to get it. And you got enough to do a few different things with it, because you knew you'd never get it again. Now I think that is no longer limited edition, and you can go to Silk Baron and you can buy this fabric. But when they first came out with it, it was limited edition. That's a trap, okay? That's a bad thing about stash. Limited edition. You'll never find this again. Those are the things that stick in your stash, and you're like, I can't touch it. I can't ruin it, because it'll never come around again. It's limited edition. Limited edition nail colors, or nail stickers, fabrics, miniatures. Oh, let's talk about limited edition miniatures. Let's talk about the Triumvirate of Iniad. Can you even get that anymore? Can you get the trio with Belisarius Call in it? I don't think so. Games Workshop, they know how to do that limited edition dance. The yearly store birthday miniatures. Thank goodness most of those aren't up my alley. But boy, at LVO, they sure announced some things that I want. And at least one of them is going to be limited edition. I don't even play the game, and I want that Seer mini. Oh, it's gorgeous. Limited edition things add up in your stash. And because they're limited edition, the emotional attachment that you have to them will try and prevent you from utilizing them. You have to resist that urge. You have to be willing to use the things that you put in your stash. Yes, okay. They can marinate. Maybe you bought Belisarius Call, but you're not confident enough in your painting skills yet to paint him up the way that you think he deserves. Sure, he can sit in your stash. Or the funeral procession of St. Catherine from the Battle Sisters line. Those things, sure, if you are not confident enough in your skill yet, they can sit there and they can wait for you. Because like we said last week, stash is eternal. Stash will wait for you. But don't let it become existential. Don't let the stash wait forever for you, because it will wait forever for you. It will wait until it outlasts you. So don't let it do that. You have to learn the lessons from the stash that it's trying to teach you. Don't let its cries fall on deaf ears. Don't let the whispers of "make me into this" go unheard. Listen to your stash. Touch your stash. Look at your stash. Do things with your stash, lest your stash crush you, crush your heart, crush your inspiration, crush your motivation and your dedication. Oh, How many times have I looked at the pile of plastic models that I am so lucky to have and felt dread because how will I ever get everything done? I fell victim to the community consensus, the shame, the overwhelming push of obligation. You gotta be careful not to let that get to you. You have to be really careful not to let other people's opinions sway your desires. Your stash is yours, and you should not be feeling shame because somebody else looked at it and they're like, well, no, they're gonna judge you. And you gotta be okay with that when you got a stash. You hear me? You gotta toughen up. Take that heart off your sleeve. Put it in a little box. Put it in your stash. All of these are just warnings, okay? I'm not saying that stash in and of itself is bad. I don't believe that stash in and of itself is bad. I do believe that certain hobby communities promote some bad behaviors with stash. I'm looking at you, knitting community. I'm looking at you, quilters. I'm looking at you, 40K. I know that there are communities that encourage or even discourage the acquisition of stash. Some communities make it a contest. Fabrics go in and out of style. Did you know this? There are fabrics that are made that are then never made again. It's a thing, okay? Limited edition yarns, limited edition anything. I'm not going to say stay away, but just be really mindful and search yourself to know, do I really want this limited edition thing? Or is it the pressure of it being scarce, being limited edition, that is making me feel like I need it? That's a question for you, because only you can answer that. I give you permission to buy the limited edition thing if it really brings you joy. If you're just buying it because it might not be available later, that's when you need to think and you need to go, do I really want this? Does this bring me joy? Or is this going to get put in a closet and never ever looked at again? Am I just doing it for the dopamine hit of having the scarce item? Am I just buying the corpse hoodie because everybody else wants it and I don't even wear hoodies? Or am I going to make a corset out of it and be able to rep my corpse pride even though I don't wear hoodies? What are you going to do with it? What is it going to enable? What is it going to turn into? Those are the questions that you need to ask yourself before you invite something into your stash, because stash will not stop growing. You have to prune your stash. It's like a goldfish that it grows to fit the size of its container is bullshit. Outright bullshit. I'm a potty mouth. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for staying. I hope you had fun with this discussion about stash and how it can be bad. I hope that you feel empowered to examine your stash and to make sure that you are a good stash owner. I hope that you are drinking water or making yourself a nice cup of tea and doing something kind for yourself today, because you deserve it. Because I said you deserve it. Please take care of my friend. I will do my very level best to take care of yours. Remember that we are here to craft a life worth living. Also, leave me a comment and tell me what the most shameful thing in your stash is. I love you. Bye-bye.